We're in Job chapter 15 as we start our third session on monetary reversionism. Now, just let me remind you what reversionism is. Reversionism is the name that we give to the doctrine where you or someone can recede from an area of truth, whether it is a divine norm or standard, whether it is light, whether it is a stage of spiritual growth. We have it in doctrinal orientation, we have it in establishment orientation, or what have you. There are authorities that can say certain things in our life and we must obey, and if we do not intend to obey, that is reversionism and that is sin. There are things that God requires of us. For example, paying a fair price for fair work. And if we say in our minds, okay, well, yes, this is what it is, but I'm going to try to get it for less. I'm going to try to milk the other guy for all his worth. Now, that is reversionism. That is receding back from an understanding that God has equal balances. So it's equal pay for equal work. And especially in light of this time, we need to be reminded of that. Because there's not a store in the tri-state area, or perhaps in the world, I do not know, there might be some, where today there are not sales going on. Everything's on sale. Everything has a percentage off. And they get us this mindset, this mentality that we must buy. And the reason that we can buy more is because they are giving us more for less money. And of course, one of the reasons that I have always balked at this is simply because, for the most part, a lot of it starts off with a lie. You cannot sell for less than what it costs you to bring that product to sell. If you start selling for less than what it costs you, you eventually go out of business or bankrupt. So therefore, this more for less is really a misnomer. What you're talking about is markup, margins of profit, and so forth. And if you sell it for a certain price, but then you're going to sell it for 25% less, and then you mark it up and take 25% off of that so that you really haven't changed anything, what you have done is lied to somebody else for the express purpose of selling that product. And people buy into those lies. And for some reason, it doesn't seem to bother us, especially on Christmas when we're talking about the one who said, I am the truth, John chapter 14, to buy into lies in order to enjoy ourselves. We have this much off, we can therefore buy more. And if you do not believe me, just go out to the east side, to just the Eastland Mall, and you will see lines, you will see bad attitudes, you will see people scrounging for all the deals and all the bargains that they can get. Some of the same people who, when it comes to their job and the price tag on their salary, fight for all of their worth, join certain groups to fight for all their worth, to get a certain amount of money coming their way, certain groups of people to join with them and saying, you will not get this service done unless you pay this price. And those same people go and want to pay less money for more product that obviously has been produced somewhere where those people don't have the same benefits. Don't have the same working conditions, the working environment, sweatshops in other words, where the product can be produced for far less because the living conditions are less. And I realize that my caterwauling up here on it from time to time is not going to change the world system. And I'm not interested in changing the world system. I'm trying to change our attitude toward this matter of money. There's two ways to look at this. On one hand, yes, there is throwing away money. You can live above your means. You can go ahead and spend and max out your credit cards. Do I hear an amen on that? You can max one out and then you can get another one so that you can put what you maxed out on the other credit card. But before you too long, like one young man told me not too long ago, but a couple of months back, I saw him from out of town. He said, and my wife and I are in trouble. We got our truck repossessed. And I said, well, what happened? And he told me about maxing out the credit cards. And so he got one and maxed it out. And so he got another one to try to compensate, and he maxed that one out. And so what he did was had to get a third one, and he maxed that one out with all of his bills. The banks foreclosed. So what am I saying? Well, he wanted more for less. He had the attitude that there were some real estate agents who used to attend this church, and they went to greener pastures elsewhere because one said, I've got the killer instinct. And I said, it's wrong for a Christian to have the killer instinct in business. I didn't say it's wrong for a Christian to work hard, do his best, and have God promote him. But it's wrong for a Christian to say, I'm going to stick it to him. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. I'm going to acquire this and acquire that. It doesn't matter what the other guy gets. It's too bad. And I said, that's kind of difficult. The other real estate agent was known as, quote, a shark in the business. And I said, that's really not a good testimony for a Christian to have, to be known as a shark in the business, to gobble it up, to get it. No, wait a minute, follow me. A shark doesn't care about its prey. We will see this in just a little bit. It simply eats its prey whole, has victims, and gobbles them up. Now here we have Jesus Christ and two men who claim to be Christians and want to glorify Jesus Christ. One has a killer instinct and one is a shark in the business. And they say, oh yeah, we love Jesus Christ. We want to be like Jesus Christ. And I say, well, how was Jesus Christ? He was holy. Yeah, well, boy, give me holiness. He was harmless. Now, that took the wind right out of their sails. You cannot have a killer instinct and you cannot be a shark. In other words, I'm not saying don't work hard and be wise in investments or whatever, but if you are out to be like a killer to acquire their property or a shark to swallow them whole without considering the other guy and his life and his livelihood, that is not being like the Son of God who was harmless. Yes, Jesus Christ worked. He was a carpenter. He sold things. He made a living. But he wasn't out to try to reduce the other guy to ashes in the process. Now that's what I'm talking about. Monetary reversionism. Knowing that Jesus Christ is harmless means that if we're going to be like Christ, we too must be harmless in those areas. We must do our best to work hard, but allow God to promote us. What we have is not important if how we got it wasn't in the will of God. And so that's important to understand. And I'm talking to all of us here as quietness settles down on the congregation once again. And the reason it does is because you've been a killer at time to time, haven't you? You wanted to be a shark in the business. You wanted more for less, something for nothing. You didn't care about the other guy just long as you got what you wanted. And I'm saying that whole attitude is wrong. To be like the Lord Jesus Christ means what the Apostle Paul says. Don't look on your own things only, but look out for the other guy. The book of Philippians. We had a little writing on that in the bulletin not too long ago. And that simply means that if the other guy is in business and working to support himself and his family, attempts to take away from him his livelihood is not being harmless. It's trying to put him to death. It's trying to be a shark in the business, to swallow him whole. And we don't want people to do that to us, but for some reason we check the Holy Spirit at the door, we check our Christian principles at the door, we enter the store and anything goes. And I think it's wrong. I don't think the Lord Jesus Christ is glorified with such a mentality. So we're going to talk about monetary reversionism. Reversionism can be in any area of life where there is a set standard specified and we run away from it. So now we just happen to be talking about money because money is the forefront in this season. It's not God, it's gold. Job chapter 15, verse 20. We've already seen that a monetary reversionist cannot love God and gold. It is a mutually exclusive law where if objects are there, you can only love one or the other. You can't love both. If you love God, then you have to put gold in its proper place. If you love gold, then you must put God in his proper place. You can't serve God or gold both at the same time. If you're serving God, then gold cannot be your master. If gold is foremost in your mind, then God is not. And it's just as simple as that. There's no such thing as serving a little bit of God and a little bit of gold. They are mutually exclusive. Now, the same thing here with regard to the monetary reversionist, and we're on point number 3 in our outline. The monetary reversionist actually suffers throughout all of his life due to his ill-gotten riches. You may think that all of these rich men really are quite comfortable and well off. The fact of the matter is the Bible says that the rich man suffers, especially, I'm not talking about one who has earned money and has it because they've earned it correctly. Not at all. Because God has promoted them. I'm talking about men who have gotten their riches by being a shark in the business and by having a killer attitude. That kind of money is ill-gotten. So that's why it says, verse number 20, the wicked man travaileth with pain all his days. That's really an interesting thing here with regard to the word travail. Because the same word is applied to the conception, the growth of a babe in the womb, and the birth of a babe. And so that's what we're going to do, because that's the picture that is drawn here. You've got a gal, and she's sweet on a guy, and they get married, and all of a sudden, she is pregnant. And everything for the time being is hunky-dory, okay? Oh, yes. We're going to have a baby. I'm going to be a little mother. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that wonderful? Then all of a sudden, the woman begins to sense changes to her body. What are those changes? Well, she once had a knockout figure, and now she has difficulties waddling through the door. Whoa! Why? Because something is growing on the inside of her that is causing expansion. What she didn't realize was that cute little thing that is inside of her is going to cause her skin to stretch and her bones to stretch and her cartilage to stretch. But not only that, in conjunction with the stretching, for the most part, there is pain. Now, thank God for his mercy that a woman only has to go through this difficulty, perhaps for 9 months, and perhaps less if you consider the time for the growth of the baby. And so he is merciful. But note what the verse says. The wicked man travails in birth pains all his days. You see, he is actually going through the process of the growth in his stomach, and also something that's known as parturition. Now, you know it as postpartum depression, or when the baby is separated from the mom. And so riches become analogous to the baby, and the expansion on the inside to the mom, who has to make adjustments for the riches. Now, in this case, of course, we're talking about a wicked man acquiring riches, so that he has to make room for expansion. And what does that bring? It brings travail on him, because he knows that if he can swindle other people in order to get this ill-gotten gain and grow, somebody can also swindle him, finagle him, cheat him, and the like. And so what does that mean? It means that he's got to keep his mind on that money, the growth of that money, at all times. That doesn't give one a whole lot of rest at night when you have to keep on thinking, well, what's going to happen to my wealth? What's going to happen tomorrow? Is my wealth going to be gone? I want to tell you, one day, if your God is gold, it will be gone. One day, if your God is the God of the Bible, he will be there tomorrow and the next day and through all eternity. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. He'll never let you down. He'll never disappoint you. But if your God is gold, you see, you can lay your head down at night if God is God, your God, and know that his mercies are going to be fresh and new to you each morning. But if your God is gold, it may not be there. Things may change overnight. You can be wealthy one day and you can have a postpartum depression the next. And that is the point here. Eventually, and here's where the pain comes, the mom realizes that she now has a problem. And that is this 8-pound, 5-ounce little rascal that she has been growing in her belly is going to pass through a birth canal that was never meant to handle such things apart from expansion that is painful. And according to the curse in Genesis chapter 3, the pain was increased because of that. So the babe has to pass through a birth canal, which was never meant to handle such a load, and to come out, and that's painful. But here is the man who is rich. He has grown this in his belly, this big pot of gold, as it were, and all of a sudden he starts dying, and it is really painful because he is going to have to separate, like the mom with the babe, with his wealth. With what he nurtured in his belly, one day is going to have to be given up. He's going to have to separate from it. And that, of course, causes him pain. You don't hit anybody you couldn't hit him in the belly any harder than hitting him in the wallet. And that's what the problem is here. And it's beginning to pass away from him. What? His wealth. He's about to be parted from it. Something that he has kept and sat on all of his life. And it hurts. And that's why it says, verse 20, the number of years is hidden to the oppressor. He doesn't know how long he is going to live. But I want you to note the word oppressor there because it's a significant word. An oppressor is someone that the Bible defines as requiring the work or services of a person without giving them proper compensation. Well, why do they oppress? What does it mean to oppress? It means that you constantly keep them down. The person works on your behalf and you benefit from their work, but they can never make ends meet because you don't pay them fairly in their compensation, and you oppress them. They can never, we put it in terms of get ahead. They can never get ahead because they never make enough money in order to get ahead. You take their services, their life, and their time. You apply it to yours. You grow your little baby inside of your womb, but you do not pay them, and that is oppression. You keep them down. You're nothing but a slave. You don't deserve. I know you did that work, but who cares? You don't pay them. And so therefore you oppress that person. You keep them at a certain financial strata while all along taking services that deserve far more in compensation. That is oppression. Dreadful sound is in the ears of such a man. In prosperity the destroyer shall come to him. Verse 21. He believes not that he shall return out of darkness, and he is waited for of the sword. These are things that are in his mind. He wanders abroad for bread, saying, where is it? He knoweth not that the day of darkness is ready at his hand. He's going to die. And we're going to see later about the miser and darkness. Trouble and anguish make him afraid. You see, any person who does this has no capacity for life. God has not given us the spirit of fear. But what is a man such as this? When I say a man, I'm talking about a woman too. What is a man such as this? They are afraid. Afraid of what? losing their God, dissipating their stockpile, losing their security for tomorrow. And I didn't say that that's wrong to plan for tomorrow, but if you think that your security is based on what you've got in the bank, you're wrong. It can disappear overnight. And I believe there are forces already in place that are moving toward that direction. What do you think the mark of the beast is? But a commonality of goods, a dispersing and an equalization of riches so that everybody has the same amount, governed and guaranteed by the great computer. That's what's happening. And it's happening to us in our world. Trouble and anguish shall make him afraid. They shall prevail against him as a king ready for battle. He doesn't know what to do, doesn't get much sleep, got stomach problems, got ulcers because he's afraid that it's not going to be there, what he lives for, what he yearns for, his money. He stretches out his hand against God. He strengthens himself against the Almighty. How does he do that? By building up his cache of money. Now, verse number 27, he covers his face with fatness. He makes the collops of fat on his flanks. In other words, he just keeps building up, and this is analogous to his bank account. He dwells in desolate cities and houses which no man inhabits, which are ready to become heaps. Now, what about this? Why is he desolate? It's because he's afraid to have anybody around him. If he has servants around him, he's got to pay them. And so therefore, they are a threat to him because that means a diminishing of his bank account. If he has family around them, he is going to have to compensate them. And so therefore, he becomes a hermit, more and more isolating himself, keeping himself warm by his cold gold. Note the last part of verse number 28. Houses which are ready to become heaps. What do these people do? They have money in the bank, but they don't want to invest it in a house in maintenance. They don't want to keep up on things. Why? Because if they do that, then therefore they are going to have to spend money to keep up. And money is what they want. Just as long as they've got money in the bank, that's going to satisfy them. Doesn't matter that life means you've got to spend money to keep up on things, to maintain things, to do things and live life. But he's afraid to live life for fear his money is going to be gone tomorrow. All right. Verse number 29. He shall not be rich. We'll see this in another point. Just as he has gotten his ill-gotten gain, that same ill-gotten gain is going to be taken away from him. It's just a fact of life. You cannot beat the system. There isn't one man that has ever taken anything with him after he has died, except that which will be compensated by God in the form of reward. Neither shall his substance continue, neither shall he prolong the perfection thereof upon the earth. Now, that word perfection has to do with a state of security that he has established due to his riches. Oh, hey, I'm perfect. Here I am. I've got my health right now. I've got money in the bank. Don't have many friends, and I don't keep up on much. But I'll tell you what, the money's there if I ever need it. And he just keeps packing it in and never putting it out because he's afraid of losing that special baby that's in there. He doesn't want to part with his goods. And all along, the pains of birth are there. He expands, and as he expands, he begins the process of death and parting with that little baby that he is forming in his womb. And it kills him. It eats him alive. It's someday he is going to have to die, and his hand cannot take his riches with him. Remember the ancient pharaohs? What did they do? They built these great big tombs, the pyramids, and they would put all their riches in there with them for the afterlife. They'd put food and riches, put a couple of slave girls and some slaves so that they'd have everything when they passed to the other side. And that's the same concept here. He wanted to take it with him, and the fact of the matter was, No one can. All right? Let's move on down here to verse number 34, where it says, "For the congregation of hypocrites shall be desolate." The group of people that wants for themselves but do not want to compensate justly in return are hypocrites. That is exactly what it is. We're hypocritical when we demand the best, the finest, the most for our time, and threaten, even go to the point of threatening other people if they do not pay this amount, and turn right around, and when it's someone else's turn to be compensated, we say, "Oh, well, that's just too much. Well, I'm not going to pay that." And yet it's a fair price. It is a right price because we want to get them down. We want to take more and the like. That's hypocrisy. The congregation, that group of people are hypocrites and shall be desolate. The fire shall consume the tabernacles of bribery. Now, what does that mean? Who is bribed? The person that is bribed in this case is the person that says, now what is a bribe? A bribe is giving money to someone in control in order to control the environment or situation in someone else's favor, the favor of the person giving them the money. So that, like if it's a judge and so forth, the judge is bribed, and the person that is a criminal, his lawyer gives the judge a certain amount of money, and the judge takes this money and it influences his decision. That's what a bribe is. But in this particular case, the person that is giving the bribe is the person that's trying to Jew down the other person. Well, you say, "Pastor, wait a minute. Who's he giving a bribe to? Himself." He is justifying his actions because he's going to get more for less. That's what the bribe is. And that's why it's talking about us. If we say, "Well, okay, yes, I know what it is, but I'm not going to compensate correctly." Now, you can feel better about it because you're going to make more money in the deal. What have you taken? A bribe? Who have you bribed? Yourself? That's what it is. That's what it's talking about. "Well, I feel good about that. I got this for so much, so much." Yes, but is it the fair price? If it was you doing it, would you take that amount of money for it? If not, you have allowed money to corrupt your judgment. You've taken a bribe. That's what it's talking about. And it's important to understand that. We hate injustice in a courtroom. We hate injustice in other places. And yet, when it comes to the marketplace, we have no qualms. We take bribes ourselves if it's going to mean we'll get more. And we think it's wrong. They conceive mischief, bring forth vanity, their belly prepares deceit. And it goes back to the original illustration here of inside the belly of the mom, there is a babe conceived. The babe grows, but it means discomfort for her in two ways. One, automatic expansion of her own body, meaning pain all these days. And secondly, when the babe is parted, separated from her, there is further and more excessive pain. And that's the illustration here of somebody who keeps wanting to get and grow that baby in their womb. There's coming a time when they're going to be parted. And of course, the bigger the babe, the worse the pain. Obviously, the woman can only go 9 months. We can't wait till the babe gets about 20 or 30 pounds before we take it from the mother's womb. But that's what is spoken of here. Just keeps growing it and growing it and growing it. Okay, let's go from this point to the Apostle Paul. 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. And we'll start with verse 9. We have just a few minutes left in this session, and we'll go to verse 10 as well. Verse 9. They that will be rich. Now, please note that. It indicates a determined desire. This 1 Timothy 6:9. An overriding mindset. They that will be. That's what I live for, riches. And you have to understand that people like this will do most anything to get riches. Compromise their values if it means they can acquire more by way of possession. That's what Paul is talking about. Now, what happens to these people who determine in their life, I'm going to be rich come what may, rather than doing your best and allowing God to promote you? Riches are not wrong if God has given them to you by way of logistical grace as a reward for your doing things right. Now, lots of men in the Bible were rich, but they got that way because God promoted them along the way. They did it right, and God said, hey, fine, I'm going to compensate. But what we're talking about is the determination to acquire wealth, having the killer instinct, being a shark in the business, letting all types of standards and values of Bible Christianity go down the drain in an attempt to get more, acquire more, have more. What happens to these people? They fall into temptation. That's the first thing. The temptation is to compromise your values, to compromise what you know to be right, to go from being like Christ, harmless, to being unlike Christ, purposely hurtful. Those that will be rich have in mind hurting the other person to get something for themselves. It doesn't matter. They can have less. I don't care. I'll oppress them. They can't make ends meet, but I'm sure going to make ends meet and more. That's what it is. And a snare. They come up, and with the very thing that they are attempting to do, it takes them in the end. And into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. The concept here is just not themselves drowning, but being on a ship where all of your wealth is in the hold. And all of your eggs are in one basket, and you are on that boat. Now all of a sudden a storm comes up, and it's bound to come. And what happens to your wealth? What happens to you? You all go down with the ship. You're all drowned. It's all in the drink. Okay, let's go to verse 10, and then we're almost done. For the love, the obsession with money, is the root of all kinds of evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith. Note that. It is not part of Bible Christianity to have a mind set on acquisitions illegally and to the hurt of other people. Fair prices, just compensation, equal balances, and so forth are all part of the Christian way of life. But now what we've talked about in point number 3 here is hurting yourself. The word travail there that we looked at is in the hithpolel participle, and it is causative reflexive. It means you're going to bring pain on yourself. There's something for every woman here. You're going to have a child, and that's fine. It's the nature of things. That's how God has designed it. But the minute you say, I'm going to grow a child in my baby, in my womb, grow a baby in my womb, grow a child in my baby. It means you cause hurt to come back on yourself. I mean, at first it's not that way, but it's going to be. And that's the same thing here. What happens to those who have this type of mindset? They pierce themselves through with many sorrows. Did you ever take a piece of meat that you're about to roast or whatever, and you want to tenderize it? That's what this word is. It's a non-occurring word. It's only here, by the way. And so you get a fork, and what do you begin doing? Puncturing that meat. And you flip it over, and you puncture it all around so that you put the herbs and the seasonings and so forth, and so that the flame can get in there and bring out the juices and the like. The same concept is with those who are determined to be rich at all cost. They pierce themselves through. Now, here's the concept. What goes around comes around. As you stick it to people here and stick it to people there and stick it to people there, guess what happens to you? It comes back around and you're pierced through. So that what you do to this person in an attempt to acquire their wealth illegally and wrongfully comes back to you, and eventually you get it in the backside as well. God does a little tenderizing of his own. Pierces themselves through with many sorrows. It is important to be above board, honest, forthright in our financial dealings with other people. The reason? Hithbolel participle, you will travail in pain, literally reflexive, you'll bring pain or pierce yourself through with sorrows all the days of your life.